5 months ago, I could barely introduce myself in English without stumbling. I was rejected from my dream job, embarrassed by my mistakes, and too afraid to speak. But today, I not only speak fluently, I got the job, changed my life, and proved to myself that with the right mindset, anyone can achieve fluency. Here's how I did it, and how you can too. Hello everyone, my name is Jake. I'm 26 years old and I come from Brazil. But only 5 months ago, I couldn't even form a single full sentence in English. Not even something as simple as, "How are you?" Without hesitating and overthinking, I felt completely lost. Today, I want to share how I managed to learn English in just 5 months, without paying for expensive courses, without traveling to an English-speaking country, and without wasting time on useless methods. But this isn't just about me. This story could also be yours. If you've ever felt frustrated, stuck, or embarrassed because of your English, stay with me. I know exactly how that feels because I was in the same place not long ago. And I promise that if you follow my journey step by step, you'll know exactly what to do to make real progress. Let's start from the very beginning. Because my journey didn't start with motivation. It began with a painful failure that completely changed my life. For as long as I can remember, I dreamed of working at an international company. My goal was to become a software engineer at a major tech firm. I loved coding, I was skilled at it, and I worked day and night to improve. After years of effort, my chance finally came. I applied to a well-known company in the United States, and one day I received an email from the recruiter. "Congratulations, you've been selected for an interview." I was thrilled. I pictured myself living abroad, earning a great salary, and collaborating with some of the best professionals in the world. But then the actual interview happened, and that's when reality hit me. I still remember it clearly. I opened Zoom and 3 interviewers appeared, all of them native English speakers. The moment they began talking, it was as if someone had pressed fast forward on their voices. I couldn't keep up. I barely understood a word. The first question came. "Jake, can you tell us a little about yourself and your experience in software development?" I froze. I knew exactly what I wanted to say in my mind, but the words wouldn't come out. All I managed was, yes, I am. Software. I do coding. Many projects. Good. I am very good. The silence that followed felt like a knife twisting in my stomach. They asked another question, but again I couldn't answer. Finally, one of them smiled politely and said, "All right, Jake, thank you for your time." I knew what that meant. I had failed. Not because I wasn't skilled in my field, but because I couldn't speak English. That day I realized something important. English wasn't just another language. It was the key to my dream, and I didn't have it. I felt ashamed, embarrassed, and angry at myself. For years I had told myself, I don't need English. If I'm good enough at my job, that will be enough. But now the truth was clear. Without English, I was invisible. That night I made a decision. I was going to learn English, and I was going to do it fast. Most people, when they begin learning, immediately sign up for expensive classes. But I didn't because I had already tried that before. A year earlier, I paid for an online English course. The teacher had me memorize long vocabulary lists, do endless grammar exercises, and study boring rules. After 3 months, I still couldn't hold a basic conversation. That experience taught me something important. Expensive classes were not the answer. If I wanted results, I needed a completely different approach, something that actually worked in real life. That's when I began developing my own 5-month method, which I'll now share with you step by step. The first 15 days. One of the biggest mistakes beginners make is thinking they need to learn more words. I made that mistake too. I believed that if I memorized 1,000 words, I'd be fluent. But the truth was I already knew hundreds of words, yet I couldn't speak a single proper sentence. So during the first 15 days, I didn't learn any new vocabulary. Instead, I focused on something far more powerful. Learning how to use the words I already knew. Here's exactly what I did. First, I created a survival sentence list. I sat down and asked myself, what do I actually need to say in daily life? I wrote 50 simple but useful sentences such as, "Hi, how are you?" "Can you repeat that?" "I don't understand." "I'm learning English. I need a coffee, please." Every morning I read these 50 sentences out loud. Not just once or twice, but 10 times each. At first, my tongue felt heavy and slow. But after 5 days, the sentences started to come out naturally and automatically. Second, I began talking to myself in English every single day. This turned out to be one of the most powerful exercises. Whenever I was alone, I described what I was doing out loud. For example, in the shower, I would say, "I am taking a shower." "The water is hot." "I feel relaxed." When making breakfast, I'd say, "I am cooking eggs." "I like eggs. They are easy to cook." At first, I felt a little ridiculous, but then I realized this was my private classroom. No one could hear me, no one could judge me, and within a week I noticed something amazing. My brain had started thinking in English. Third, I practiced 5 sentences a day, but with a special twist. Each day I picked 5 sentences from movies or real conversations. Instead of just reading them, I copied them exactly, matching the emotion, rhythm, and pronunciation of the native speaker. I repeated each one at least 10 times. This exercise helped me improve my accent and sound far more natural. By the end of the first 15 days, I noticed a huge change. I stopped translating everything in my head. I could form simple sentences without hesitation, and I felt my confidence growing. But this was only the start, because after those 15 days, I was finally ready to begin the real practice. I wanted to do more than just form simple sentences. I wanted to hold real conversations. I wanted to understand native speakers without constantly translating in my head. I wanted to speak naturally and confidently. So, I came up with a new strategy, one that completely changed everything for me. If you follow this method, you'll improve faster than you think possible. I noticed something important. Whenever I tried to speak English, my brain felt slow. I knew the vocabulary, but I couldn't connect the words quickly enough. I needed a way to make speaking flow naturally. That's when I developed a technique I now call the question-answer method. The idea was simple but incredibly powerful. Here's how it worked. First, I asked myself an easy question in English. Then I answered it immediately without pausing to think too much. After that, I repeated the process but gave slightly different answers each time. For example, I started with the question, "What did you do today?" At first, my answer was short. I worked, but I pushed myself to add more detail. I worked on my project. Then, I worked on my project for 3 hours. Next, I worked on my project for 3 hours. Then I took a break. And finally, I worked on my project for 3 hours. Then I took a break and had some coffee. Each time I expanded the response little by little. This trained my brain to think in English and build longer sentences without hesitation. Here's another example. The question, "What did you eat for breakfast?" First answer, "I ate eggs." Then, "I ate eggs and toast." Next, "I ate eggs, toast and a banana." Then, "I ate eggs, toast and a banana because I was very hungry." Finally, "I ate eggs, toast and a banana because I was really hungry and I love having a big breakfast." I practiced this every single day for at least half an hour. Soon, my speaking speed increased, my sentences grew longer, and best of all, I stopped translating in my head. One of my biggest struggles, though, was pronunciation. Even when I managed to speak, my strong accent made me sound very foreign. Native speakers could understand me, but my speech didn't sound natural. That's when I discovered something I call the echo technique. This was the most effective way I found to improve pronunciation without a teacher. Here's how I did it. Step 1, I chose an audio source with native speakers and from movies, YouTube or podcasts. Step 2, I played a short clip, then paused after one sentence. Step 3, I repeated the sentence exactly, copying the same tone, speed, and emotion. For example, in one movie a character said, "I don't know what you're talking about." I paused the video and echoed, "I don't know what you're talking about." At first, it felt awkward, but after repeating it 10 times, my voice began to match the rhythm of the native speaker. Another time I practiced with a podcast. The speaker said, "It was a beautiful day, so I decided to go for a walk." I paused, then echoed, "It was a beautiful day, so I decided to go for a walk." I repeated it over and over until it felt natural. I did this exercise for 30 minutes every day. After 1 month, the difference was unbelievable. Even native speakers began telling me, "Wow, your English sounds really natural." Of course, vocabulary was also important. But I already knew memorizing long word lists didn't work. So instead, I created what I now call the story method. Here's how I used it. First, I picked 5 new words each day. Second, I made up a short story using all of them. Third, I read the story out loud 10 times. Finally, I used those words in real conversations whenever I had the chance. For example, let's say my new words were excited, invitation, party, arrive, surprise. My story would be, I was very excited because I received an invitation to a big party. When I arrived at the party, I got a huge surprise when it was my birthday party. I followed this method daily, and after 3 months, I had learned more than 1,000 new words without memorizing anything by force. But I realized another big challenge. Many learners, including myself, think first in their native language and then translate into English. This makes speech slow and unnatural, so I trained my brain to think directly in English. Here's how I practiced. First, I described everything around me in English. For example, while walking outside, I thought, the sky is blue. The weather is hot. I see people walking. That man is wearing a red shirt. Second, I kept asking myself questions in English and immediately answered them. For example, what am I doing right now? I am sitting in a chair drinking coffee and writing in my notebook. Third, I wrote a daily journal in English. Every night I wrote about my day. In the beginning, my sentences were very simple. But within a month, my writing flowed more naturally. After just a few weeks, I noticed something incredible. I had stopped translating. English words came to me directly, without going through my native language first. One of the most powerful rules I made for myself was this. Every single day, I had to speak English for at least 2 hours. No excuses. If I didn't have someone to talk to, I spoke to myself. If I was busy, I spoke while doing daily tasks like cooking, cleaning, or walking. And whenever I felt lazy, I reminded myself, English is my future. I cannot give up. Part 3. My final breakthrough. By this point, I had built a strong habit of listening, repeating, and speaking. But I also realized something very important. If I wanted to sound truly natural, I couldn't rely only on speaking and listening. I needed to understand grammar and sentence structure, the way native speakers use them in real life. I didn't want to keep making mistakes that confused people. I wanted to speak clearly and naturally. So I began paying close attention to how native speakers built their sentences. Every time I heard a phrase, I didn't just repeat it blindly. I asked myself, why is it structured this way? For example, I often heard people say, I have been learning English for 5 months. But in school, I had been taught to say, I am learning English for 5 months. That was my first big discovery. The English taught in classrooms is often different from the English people actually use. This pushed me to research more deeply. I studied how tenses were applied in real conversations when people actually use the present perfect. Why they say I have been learning instead of I am learning. Small details like these made a huge difference. They were the key to making my English sound authentic and natural. I began paying close attention to common sentence patterns and practiced weaving them into my daily English use. One of my toughest struggles was with prepositions. Why do we say on the bus but in the car? Why is it at night but in the morning? These little differences confused me constantly. To solve this, I carried a small notebook everywhere. Whenever I stumbled upon a confusing preposition, I jotted it down with an example. If I couldn't figure it out, I searched online or listened carefully to how native speakers naturally used them. To push my progress further, I started writing a diary in English every night. In the beginning, my writing was very simple. Today I went to work. I was tired. I ate pizza. It was good, but I didn't want to stay stuck at that level. I asked myself, how do native speakers actually write? So I started reading blogs, articles, and books in English. I observed how sentences were formed, and then I tried to mimic that style in my journal. Slowly, my entries became more polished and natural. Another powerful tool I discovered was shadowing. I found videos of native speakers, put on headphones, and repeated every word right after them, copying their speed and pronunciation. I did this exercise for at least 20 minutes a day, and within a few weeks my pronunciation improved more than I thought possible. I also practiced by watching English movies with subtitles. But instead of just watching passively, I paused after every sentence and repeated it out loud. I focused on the rhythm, tone, and intonation of each line. Little by little, my English began to sound more natural and less robotic. It was during this stage that I realized something very important. English isn't just about vocabulary and grammar. It's also about confidence. Many people know enough English but are too afraid to use it. I promised myself that I wouldn't let fear hold me back. I started speaking in English whenever I got the chance. At work, at the store, with friends, even with strangers. At first I worried about making mistakes, but I noticed something surprising. People still understood me. They didn't laugh. They didn't judge. That small realization gave me the courage to keep going. But soon I had to face my biggest fear, speaking with native English speakers. I was terrified that I'd freeze or that they wouldn't understand me at all. To prepare, I chose 10 common conversation topics and practiced them daily. Things like, how was your day? What do you do for work? What's your favorite food? I practiced answering these questions in full, fluent sentences until they felt natural. Then came the leap. I joined an online group where people from around the world gathered to practice English. At first, my heart raced every time I spoke, but soon I realized everyone was there to learn just like me. I made friends from different countries and we practiced together regularly. Not only did this help me improve faster, but it also made the entire process fun. As I approached the final stage of my learning journey, something inside me shifted. I felt a deep, unshakable confidence growing. I was no longer the same person who had once been rejected because of poor English. I had rebuilt myself step by step with discipline, practice, and the right mindset. I remember one day standing in front of the mirror, talking to myself in English like I always did. But this time felt different. I wasn't hesitating. I wasn't mentally translating. The words flowed naturally, almost effortlessly. It felt like magic, but I knew it was the result of months of dedication. That same day, I decided to test myself. I joined an online meeting where people from different countries discussed various topics in English. At first, the nerves returned, but I reminded myself, I've worked too hard to doubt myself now. So I spoke. And to my amazement, the words came out clear and confident. I didn't stumble. I didn't freeze. I understood everything the others were saying, and they understood me. People even responded to my ideas, nodded in agreement, and asked me follow-up questions. That moment was life-changing. It was the day I knew I had truly achieved fluency. Exactly 5 months after I began my journey, I applied once more for my dream job. But this time, I wasn't the same Jake who had walked nervously into an interview months earlier. I wasn't the candidate who stammered, who shrank under pressure, who couldn't find the right words. This time I entered with confidence. I sat in front of the interviewer not as someone afraid of English, but as someone who had mastered it. I spoke clearly. I answered every question smoothly. I wasn't just speaking English, I was commanding it. And I could see it in their eyes. They were impressed, not only by my language skills, but also by my persistence and transformation. A few days later, the call finally came. I'll never forget those words. Jake, congratulations, you got the job. For a second, I couldn't even believe it. The same company that once rejected me now wanted me. My starting salary was $5,000 a month, more than I had ever imagined earning. I stood there holding my phone, my hands shaking, tears streaming down my face. The very first thing I did was call my parents. Mom, Dad. I did it. On the other end, my mother broke down crying. My father, a man of few words and rare emotions, simply said, "We always knew you could." In that moment, it hit me. I wasn't doing this only for myself. I was doing it for my parents too. With the very first paycheck I received, I decided to give back to them in a small but meaningful way. For my father, I bought a wristwatch he had always admired but never allowed himself to purchase. For my mother, I chose a delicate gold necklace, a token of appreciation for the countless sacrifices she had made throughout her life. When I handed them the gifts, they tried to push them away. "We don't need anything, son," they said softly. But I insisted. "Please let me. This is my way of saying thank you for standing by me, for believing in me even when I couldn't believe in myself." At that instant, I realized that every late night, every frustration, every struggle had been worth it. From this journey, I gathered lessons that changed not only my English but my outlook on life. Let me share them with you. The first lesson is that mindset changes everything. For a long time, I convinced myself that English was too difficult, that I wasn't capable, The moment I replaced that thought with, I'm improving every single day, everything shifted. If you keep repeating that you can't, you'll prove yourself right. But once you believe you can, you'll find a way forward. Second, surround yourself with English completely. I switched my phone to English, consumed English podcasts, songs, and videos even if I didn't understand everything at first. I followed English-speaking creators online and trained my brain to stay immersed. I even built a habit of naming objects in English as I saw them, like noticing a passing car and saying, "That's a blue car. It's moving fast." Those little habits added up quickly. Third, speak without fear. The biggest trap learners fall into is waiting until they're perfect before speaking. That day never comes. Mistakes are not failures, they're stepping stones. I pushed myself to ask shopkeepers questions in English, to approach strangers for directions, and to practice aloud with myself whenever I was alone. Each time I improved a little more. Fourth, active listening and shadowing. Listening isn't passive, it's training. I spent hours with English podcasts, audiobooks, and videos, but instead of just hearing them, I copied what I heard in real time. This method, called shadowing, helped me mimic pronunciation, tone, and rhythm until they became second nature. Fifth, grow your vocabulary in context. At first I tried memorizing endless word lists, but it didn't work. Instead, I learned phrases and sentences. Not just the word happy, but expressions like, "I feel so happy today," or, "That movie made me really happy." Learning words in their natural use made them stick far better. Sixth, learn grammar by doing, not by memorizing rules. I didn't bury myself in grammar books. I spoke, listened, and made mistakes. When I said something like, "He go to school," and someone corrected me, I remembered the right form. He goes to school. Real-life use taught me faster than rules on a page ever could. Seventh, consistency matters more than perfection. Some people wait until they know enough before practicing. I did the opposite. I practiced from day one, even with a handful of words. Some days I spoke for just 10 minutes. Other days I wrote a few lines, and sometimes I simply listened. What mattered was that I kept moving forward daily. You don't need expensive classes or a perfect environment. What you need is persistence, practice, and a clear goal. Picture yourself 6 months from now, speaking fluently, confidently, unlocking opportunities you never imagined. Imagine how proud you'll feel. Start today. Speak, listen, write, practice, keep moving. Your future self will thank you for the effort. Because here's the truth. The effort may be uncomfortable, but regret lasts a lifetime. The only thing standing between you and fluency is consistency. So stop doubting. Stop waiting for the right time. Surround yourself with English, push yourself to speak, listen actively, make mistakes, and keep going. Choose discipline over excuses. Choose growth over fear. Choose success over regret. Your journey to fluency begins right now. And if my story has inspired you, I want you to remember, if I could do it, so can you. You're not alone. I'll be here walking with you on this path. Let's grow together.